Welcome back to the Basketball Show. Paul Sir, Ryan Reed joining you this morning on Sports 1440. Happy to be joined once again by our good friend Kevin Lehman, longtime voice of men's college basketball, joining us today on the Basketball Show. Kevin, welcome to the program. It's great to have you back.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be back. How's your bracket doing? Because I got a little red ink on mine.
Mine's, you know what, honestly, mine's not as ugly as it normally is, Kevin, but it's still ugly. Like, it ain't pretty. But but usually mine are train wrecks. Grand Canyon was not a good choice in the men's bracket, Kevin.
Well, you know, history tells you they're a good one to go with.
Yeah, and I thought they were better than they were, and certainly better than they were last night, and they probably are. But as you know, as well as anybody, the one shining moment can go. It can be a bright spotlight, or it can be a very dull, disappointing, quick exit. Yeah. And so, just ask Clemson, huh?
Yeah, that's the one I got wrong with that Clemson team. But you know, and I had that team. Oh, hold on a second. I got to knock on my window.
Okay.
You need to leave, sir. You know that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back with you.
Okay. When I heard you need to leave, sir, I'm thinking, where's Kevin hanging out now? But
well, I had that McNeese State team in the Paradise Jam, so I knew it has a pretty good team, but I guess they're a little trouble today with Purdue.
Yeah, they're getting worked right now. But they had their one shining moment, and Clemson woke up far too late, made a game of it. It was certainly, boy, talk about a tale of two halves, huh?
Yeah, no question. I thought they were going to make a comeback on them, but we've got, you know, they're having a little trouble today with Purdue.
Yes. Purdue's, the Big Ten defense, I think, is just really getting to them. You know, Kevin, I want to run through some of the matchups today. We're going to start with our Iowa roots, and let's talk about the Drake game the other night and their victory over Missouri. That really was a special moment for a whole lot of reasons, wasn't it?
Well, I had Drake a number of times. I probably had him 12 times this year. So that was not an upset in my mind. I knew Drake was going to be able to control the tempo in that game, which they did. And the teams that try to run with Drake, you can't do it. So if you're going to beat Drake, you have to kind of, what I call, get down and ugly and play a dirty game like they are. You got to beat them at their own style. And that's hard to do because they control possessions so well.
Well, the fact that they are last in the NCAA in terms of time of taking their shots on average it's an incredible style of play. And to me, we were talking about this when we opened the show. It's part of the absolute beauty of NCAA basketball, in my opinion, Kevin, is that this is so unique now globally, certainly compared to the NBA. But the fact that the international style of play is pretty much across the board very, very similar. It's people executing out of the screen and roll with a 24-second clock. Coaches are taken out of the flow of the game because you can't call a timeouts when play is going on. The wider key, all of those factors add up, and it's wonderful to watch NCAA basketball. So a team like Drake with lesser physical ability can go against a much more talented team physically and be able to control the game the way Drake does and end up being victorious.
And what's amazing about that, Paul, if you look at this Drake team, what they do defensively, and they have an interesting concept in their game preparation. They don't use scout teams. They just defend what they call concepts, and they had 13 steals against that Missouri team. They averaged 9 steals plus per game in Valley play. They led the Valley. And this is a team that doesn't press. They play a half-court defense that's really smothering, and they're really active with their hands. Really well-coached team, and they're going to give who they got coming up here today.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, which, you know, Grant McCaslin and Ben McCollum are best of friends. Those teams actually scrimmaged in one of those secret scrimmages back in November, so they know each other pretty well. I don't know if they'll be able to sneak up on this Tech team.
Tech team's awfully good. This would be a major upset. I totally agree with you. I think Tech, they're very physical, and it's going to be really tough for Drake to match up with them. And I'm curious to see how how the guards handle the tech pressure as well.
Well, I tell you what, their spacing's so good with Drake that pressure hasn't bothered them much. And what they do is, they're going to go through that pressure, they're going to pull it back out and milk that shot clock. And I think it kind of mentally wears out on the team trying to press against him. And if Tech tries to shoot a bunch of threes like they did the other night, that works against you because you're going to go and play defense at the other end. I had a Bradley game where they were on defense for a minute 20 against the Drake team. They never left the half court because they gave up 2 offensive rebounds.
That's again the magic of March Madness, is that you get to showcase a team like Drake that most people A, haven't heard of, and B, have never had the opportunity to watch up in Canada. Certainly, if they're down in the States, you always have access to it. I'm going to go a little bit down memory lane right now, just because a lot of people aren't aware of Drake basketball history. But Drake actually made it to the Final Four, and I want to say that was 1969 with the great Willie Wise, Dolph Pulliam. Was it Jeff Halliburton as well? And went up against and lost to in a very close game against Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's UCLA team, correct?
Correct, 1969. And Rick Wanamaker, who was a very successful real estate agent in Des Moines, actually blocked Lou Alcindor's skyhook.
I remember.
The only person to ever do it. Yeah, Rick Wanamaker also was a decathlete in the Drake relay. So you're an Iowa guy. You know those names too. Dolph Pulliam, Willie Wise, Willie McCarter. And the fifth starter the great trivia question for that team is the fifth starter was a guy named Don Draper. Not the Don Draper from Mad Men, but the same name of Don Draper.
That's tremendous. Let's jump back to the bracket. Auburn, number 1 seed overall. Number 1 seed. What do you think? Auburn clearly a favorite to get to the finals, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. But today, you got Kalkbrenner, who's the 4-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, going against Janiah Broome. So if anybody can hail him 101, this is a guy that can do it. Can Creighton shut down that three-point shooting and the other perimeter guys, and they don't have to double inside because of Kalkbrenner's size and presence around the rim? That's going to be a great one-on-one battle inside between Creighton and Auburn. But I think Auburn, even though they've lost a couple here of late, that's still my pick to get to the Final Four.
I've got them as well going to the Final Four, but another one of their SEC counterparts in Florida, they're awfully tough as well, and they're going to be squaring off against UConn. I picked Florida in that one. UConn this year, they had a nice win last night over Oklahoma, but they're not the UConn that won 2 national championships in a row, are they?
They are not, but I will say this about this game coming up, Florida and UConn. Florida's never been in this type of pressure situation before. Their coach has not coached in this situation, and Bobby Hurley has. So you got to give a little edge to UConn on that. I don't know if they have enough talent to overcome this Gator team that is really, really good. And I've got them winning the whole thing. I'll let that out of this bag right now. But again, as I think about, they're not experienced in that area. And Paul, in this situation, coaching is so important. The coaches that have been there, face this type of pressure, know how to get their teams ready, because there's so much media, so much things going on outside the lines that you have to deal with your team and prepare them for that.
Kevin, one of the differences, and we've touched on it quite a bit on our program today, is the beauty of NCAA basketball is that it really is the most unique brand of basketball left in the world. I mean, the NBA is well documented now as a three-point analytics chuck fest. But when you watch international basketball globally, really the similarities between how teams play with their drag and screen and roll and spacing, it's so similar. Whereas when you get to the NCAA, you really have not just a variety of styles of play and the way offenses and defenses are run, but you cannot overstate what you just pointed out. The impact of coaching is much greater in the NCAA than any other style of basketball globally, because the coaches can still call timeouts during the play. You can in the NBA as well. But That's so different, that the narrow key, traditional back to the basket post players, but the coaching and the adjustments and the ability to change momentum, I think, is accentuated in the NCAA more than anywhere else.
That's a great point, because you have a number of those timeouts. You have those floating timeouts. You can extend the game at the end by fouling and sending to a team to the free throw line, and in essence trying to trade threes for twos or threes for ones and extend games that way. Some of us get frustrated because the end of a college game sometimes takes 10 minutes to play the last minute of the game, but also that's what makes it exciting. I still would love to see the college game advance the ball after a made basket on a timeout to the half court. I think that would even add more excitement to that college game. But I'm right with you. I think the coaching is much more accentuated in this type of tournament, and it's a one and done. It's not like in the NBA where you've got a 7-game series. This is it's do or die every time you go out there. If you lose, you're going to be hanging up your shoes, and the next team gets to advance. So there's so much pressure on these types of situations.
Talking with Kevin Lehman here on the Basketball Show on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Kevin, a couple of other matchups that I'm really curious about. One is BYU and Wisconsin. Now, BYU has been, I think, a storyline that's developed over the course of the year. They've got some outstanding players, seem to be really well coached, beat a very good Iowa State team twice, and were really successful in the Big 12. So now they match up against Wisconsin, who looks not like the typical Wisconsin teams of old. Like whenever you watch Wisconsin, you always expect the score to be 53-49. Well, this Wisconsin team's very different. But I think this is a real intriguing matchup.
No, I'm with you, Paul. Greg Gard, we try to fire him every year. And every year he comes back with a great team. He's certainly morphed the way that he's played, because it used to be the old flex offense.
Yep.
Down in the shot clock. But now they're playing fast. I think they had like 30-some threes when they beat Iowa. They set a record on threes when they played the Iowa Hawkeyes at home. And BYU, you referenced that game against Iowa State. They had 20-plus turnovers in that game at Hilton Coliseum against the Iowa State Cyclones. Still won the game because they shot so many threes. So, again, we talk about the three-point line being a huge factor. Both these teams are going to want to shoot threes. So this will be not your typical Wisconsin game, as you said. This will be high-scoring, and they'll be ready in threes wherever they're playing this game, and it'll be very interesting.
Another matchup I really am intrigued by is Houston and Gonzaga. Gonzaga had a real nice game against Georgia the other night, and I think it surprised people because I think a lot of people picked Georgia, quite frankly, because they're very athletic, very talented. But you mention often, Kevin, about the experience of the coaching and the experience of the program and how that plays into March Madness in this one-and-done environment. I mean, what Mark Few has done at Gonzaga is nothing short of remarkable, to have that program mentioned in the same blue blood conversation as Kentucky and North Carolina and Duke. It's just remarkable. But, boy, oh boy, this Houston team is tough.
Yeah, it is. And you wonder if Tommy Lloyd going to Arizona and the pipeline that Gonzaga had from foreign players may have dried up a little bit. They don't quite seem to have the same talent pool they had in the past.
That's right.
But look what Kelvin Sampson at Houston has done in the Big 12. He's replaced Kansas as the team to beat in the Big 12. You look what he's done the last 2 years. He's won the league both years. They've only been in it in 2 years. And he's also taken an Oklahoma team years ago to the Final Four. So Kelvin Sampson has that experience. And when you talk to him, he spent those years in the NBA, and he said that really helped him become a better college coach. And I think he's learned to designate better. I think this Houston team, because not only do they defend probably as well as anybody, if not the best defensive team in the country, they also make threes. They're making threes at 40%. So I think when you go deep in the tournament, it's about guard play. L.J. Cryer has won, how about this one, 4 Big 12 championships, 2 at Baylor and 2 at Houston. Not many guys can put that on their resume. I think this is a really, really solid Houston team.
It really is. Every time I've watched them, I've been impressed. Certain teams stand out, Houston being one, Drake another. how they play defense. And it's something I wanted to mention to you, Kevin, that I also love about the NCAA is the emphasis on defense compared, say, to the NBA, where they have all those silly rules and restrictions and how you can defend, which to me is an elementary. They've taken the best athletes in the world and given them elementary school rules and how they have to play defense. I mean, there's no dumber rule in basketball than defensive 3 seconds, in my opinion. But but the way Houston helps on screens, the way they recover, the effort and intelligence that they play with and toughness, my goodness, that is something I would encourage anybody who watches this game between Gonzaga and Houston to watch in particular. It's not the pretty part of the game, it's the gritty part of the game. But man, that team is gritty.
Well, they do things that, they flood to the ball, so all eyes are on the basketball. And I think it comes down to your ability to own your own matchup and your recoveries when you come out of those double teams. Because as you mentioned before, everyone's doing a high ball screen, and that's to distort your defense. So if you got 2 players on the ball, you're playing obviously 4-on-3 behind it. So how well can you cover up and rotate? Houston does that as well as anybody. I was able to call some Houston games when Kelvin Sampson first went in there. He didn't quite have the talent yet that he has now, but certainly to watch one of his practices and understand how he evolved as a coach and what their philosophies are is really, really was a great eye-opening experience for me. And Kelvin's done this too. He's made this a family affair. He's got his son on as assistant coach, and evidently they have the film sessions at his house so he can go home and play with his grandkids. So the players come to his house to allow him more family time. I think it's a really unique situation, and he's really adjusted his coaching style in today's college basketball world.
You know what? I don't know this for a fact, Kevin, and I'm talking to Kevin Lehman, longtime NCAA play-by-play television coverages by Kevin through many, many decades here on the basketball show on Sports 1440. But in the old days, and by that I mean as recent as 5 years ago, with the NCAA's draconian way of regulating college basketball, Calvin having teams over and feeding them, doing film, may have even been an NCAA violation. Like the way that, when you look at the NCAA today compared to 10 years ago, it's an unrecognizable organization.
Yeah, wasn't there a time of within the last decade that you couldn't give them you give them like jelly for their bagels, but you couldn't give them cream cheese. That's how iconic.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, the NCAA was. But certainly now at the age of NIL, opening them up, and this house settlement that's coming here in April is going to change the landscape of basketball even more, of college athletics, even more than we've seen it change. I got a great Kelvin Sampson story for you that I saw one time on The Athletic, because when he took the job at Houston, he went to talk to his AD. He said, my AD, he had like 4 phones on this side of him, 3 laptops, and I was talking to him about what I needed to be successful. He never looked up. And I finally said to him, if you want to win national championships, and that's when the AD finally looked up from his phones and started listening. Because if we don't make these changes, you're going to fire me in 5 years like you fired the last 3 coaches in 5 years. So, he understood what it took to be successful. And I think you're going to see now with this new age of NIL, transfer portal, there's going to be some haves and some have-nots in college basketball. I think the upsets of Drake are going to become fewer and fewer as we go through this NCAA tournament.
I think you're right. This is a topic for another time, and I'd love to do a deep dive into the future, because adding in, and I'm going to link it into another question for you, adding in the fact that you can now go out of high school and play junior college basketball and not lose any eligibility, to me, that's a game changer. But I'm glad it's happening, because it's now going to be harder and harder for high school players to get recruited, unless you're a McDonald's All-American caliber player, because, and this is the line of questioning, today we have a great matchup between 2 storied, controversial coaches in John Calipari at Arkansas against Rick Pitino at St. John's. And Pitino has been very vocal about, I'm not recruiting high school kids. I'm going after 22 to 24-year-old men. That change is very real now. It used to be the one and done. You know, we saw a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds out there playing. Not so much anymore.
Well, I've seen this too, Paul, because what you're talking about. The Northern Iowas of the world in the Missouri Valley Conference, the Drakes of the world. Northern Iowas had their best recruiting class as far as rankings in their history, because now there's a group of players in that, let's say, ranked 150th to 250 that they couldn't touch before, because the power leagues that you're talking about are either going to take a one and done, or they're going to go to the transfer portal and take a mid-major, another player that's been proven. So what you're seeing, the mid-majors now become the junior colleges or the feeder system for these Power 5 programs. That would be the Power 4 plus the Big East, the major conferences. So it's interesting to see how this is going to develop, because the mid-majors now can maybe recruit a better class of player out of high school and develop them, but how long can they keep them? Because I think Northern Iowa's thinking is that we're going to keep these guys for 2 years, and then you go make some real money in NIL as you go into maybe a Big 10, SEC school, Big East school, Big 12 school.
Isn't that a crazy – what you just described, it just struck me. That was how you used to perceive junior college. Now you're looking at mid-majors becoming farm teams for the Blue Bloods, and it's very, very real in the way that you described it. It's just fundamentally changing everything about the game of basketball in the NCAA. But we just had Chris. What's Chris's last name? He's the play-by-play radio voice of the Oregon Ducks women's program, and you know, he was just talking about embracing NIL, because you have to now. You have to see where you fit in the food chain now in NCAA basketball, don't you?
You certainly do. And even if you're a mid-major, you have to say to your players, okay, what's your best interest, to go on somewhere else and make more money? So you have to have that open door policy, because if you come that coach that closes the door or gets upset when your players leave, you're going to have that reputation and you won't be able to recruit anymore. So it's become an open door both ways. It's really interesting to see the players, you know, and I've been around Northern Iowa a lot. You know that program.
Yes.
It was a developmental program. I had the Bradley NIT game Wednesday where they beat North Alabama, another team that would get players, keep them for 5 years, redshirt them the year, put more weight on them, hopefully kids that might grow an inch or two. Those players now they can't keep in their program. And so I'm wondering how those coaches that were developmental coaches that were really solid and mid-majors that were always at the top of the league, how they can continue to thrive and with this new landscape we're seeing in college basketball. And I had this interesting conversation with ESPN with my producers that assign games about what we talked about. There's a better class of players that the mid-majors can recruit. And his comeback was, yeah, but look how much better we are at the top now with the Auburns of the world, Houston's, because now if they need a certain type of player, they can go back and pick them off a mid-major team and plug it in. So the teams at the top are going to be even better now. Of course, he's looking at it as a viewership, because they're always giving us numbers, how many eyeballs viewed these games that they played. So they're looking at a different angle than purists like you and I are looking at it.
Purists like you and I. That makes us sound really smart, Kevin. I like that. I really do. And I'm talking to Kevin Lehman.
That are very old.
Definitely right on the last one. Kevin Lehman's joining us here on the Basketball Show. Unfortunately, we'll have to wrap things up. I have a couple of final questions for you. If you had to pick one team right now that you think is going to pull an upset off over this weekend, who would you pick?
I think I got to stick with the Drake team, because I've seen them so much and their ability to control tempo, put pressure on a team, and have them so, you know, they're get tight around their just get, like we saw the Missouri team. They just got tight as that game went on because they couldn't get that team into the flow that they wanted. And Drake can control tempo. So that would be my team, the Drake Bulldogs. Can they beat Tech and advance to the Sweet 16? We certainly hope so.
That would be great for not just for the Drake culture and the Drake experience, but also Missouri Valley and mid-majors in general, because to your point, I did have one final point to make as well. The rumor has it, and I don't know the young man's name off the top of my head, but the number one recruit out of high school next year is going to be going apparently to Brigham Young University, because one of the billionaire supporters of BYU is forking out, I think it's $8 million to get him to show up. That's another X factor in all of this, isn't it? It's going to be not just tradition, it's going to be the deep pockets that an individual school that may not be on the blue blood radar right now, but could get awfully competitive quickly because they have the financial backing in order to get top players to come there.
Well, and Paul, we're seeing it with coaches, because Darren DeVries, who I coached at Northern Iowa, took Drake to the tournament 3 times, went to West Virginia, just took the Indiana job. He was offered the Iowa job where his brother was a football All-American. He's got Iowa ties. Their NIL money was nowhere near Indiana's. He turned that job down to take the Indiana job. So you're seeing coaches now, their first question is, how much do I have in NIL money? Basically, what is my payroll for acquiring players? So watching coaches move is also going to be a huge factor in who takes which jobs.
Wow. Never thought of that, but that makes perfect sense from a business planning standpoint. What's your budget comparatively? That definitely is Iowa's loss and Indiana's gain, because DeVries can really coach.
Well, and you're an Iowa guy, Paul. So Iowa's at a crossroads right now, because they have to decide whether they're going to be a player,
yes, or
they're going to be a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. This is a huge, huge year, because they have to get their NIL package, which is around $1.2 million, toward the bottom of the Big Ten. It's got to be around $6 million for NIL money to put your roster together, and they're nowhere near that. So they have to make some huge decisions. Plus, pay off Fran McCaffrey $4.2 million. Plus, they're trying to do a $60 million renovation of Carver Hawkeye.
Wow. That's a lot of zeros that they're going to have to come up with in a state that's not used to that kind of cash, having to acquire that kind of cash. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today. Absolute pleasure as always, and I look forward to doing this again real soon.
Okay, Paul, enjoy the weekend. This is the greatest weekend of college basketball, of sports in the entire year.
Totally agree with you. Kevin Lehman, longtime NCAA college basketball voice. You can check Kevin out in the NIT right now. Great broadcaster joining us here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Going to take a break right now. We'll come back, talk more Madness, more NCAA. We're going to talk more about the Women's March Madness as well, here on your sports leader, Sports 1440.